computer. So good morning, good morning, good morning. Now, someone asked me to talk about soul retrieval. I do a lot of work with souls, but I had to go and use good old Google to figure out exactly what. I knew that the indigenous people, that shamans use soul retrieval, and I've had people come to me and say they've had soul retrieval work done. But I wasn't really 100% sure exactly what that meant. I feel I do now. Sandra Ingerman wrote Soul Retrieval, Mending the Fragmented Self. Now, I found it, as I read, she had quite a lot of information, and actually I suggest you Google it and look at it, because it was just like reading my journey, although my work ended up being a little bit different. She explains the role of the shaman, and I, for the first time, totally understood what the shaman is doing. She also mentioned she made an author's note to her original book in 1997. Then in 2006, she wrote an afterword. And what I got from what she's written is very similar to my journey. As you go along, you learn more and more and more, and things change a little. Maybe not some of the basic premises, but definitely your ideas grow. You change some of the way you do certain things. But her similarities of her journey and mine was really amazing. And it made me realize, too, that you never have an original thought. If you have it, so has somebody else. And I've always known that. You know, I can have lots of stories about that when I realized, oh, I better move on this, because especially renting a place and different other things. And so, and also it shows, too, very often when people apply for patents on certain things, at almost the same time, because no idea is really original. No idea is just that's the end. It's all big. So one of the differences between Sandra Ingerman's work on soul retrieval, as she is a shaman, and myself, is the shaman looks outside to find the lost part of the soul, because that's what they talk about, the fragment of the soul. I look inside to what I call frozen emotional children. Well, we've actually, it's looking at that frozen adults are also work. It doesn't mean I talk about children because that's how I set it off, looking at my inner self, my inner children, my inner child. I was getting all those comments about inner child, and I didn't like what I was hearing in some ways. But anyway, so to make a long story short, it came up. And now, in re-looking at my book, Connecting to the Light, which talks about my journey and talks about the process that I do, I wrote it originally in 96, and I updated it a bit in 2001, and I have been thinking I need to rewrite it because there's a lot of ghost references in it. So what was interesting with Sandra Ingerman's and my work, we both use light. Light being another word for connection to love, the source, the essence of all the things. Now, what I discovered was we freeze in space and time. When we have trauma, whether it is physical, sexual, or emotional, the part of us experiences it, it freezes in time. Now, the shaman says the soul leaves. I haven't found that. I have found that we freeze inside. It's kind of like a little part of it's locked up. Now, interestingly, there's no coincidences in this world. I watched a movie last night on Netflix. It wasn't a pleasant movie to watch, but I watched it because it was called July 22nd, which is my birthday. And it was a movie about mass killing, believe it or not, which happened in Norway, July 22nd, 2011. As I watched this movie proceed, it just sort of fits so much into what I was going to talk about today. It showed the processes of the many people involved, and unfortunately it involved this man on a mission, and he went on and he killed a lot of children. And one of the boys was severely hurt. He had 5 bullets. He still till this day lives with fragments in his brainstem and knows he can die any minute with that. But in his when they were going after this fellow in the court, this young man came in and he didn't really want to see him, but he said something that was really telling for me. He was looking at and he said, "I am still on the beach," because that's where he was shot. He was lying on the beach, shot up. "I'm still on the beach." How many times do we have memories that come back and come back and come back and come back? In the middle of nowhere, we can have a memory remembering something. And that's where, as far as I'm concerned, we freeze in space and time. And that's that part of it, is whether you call it soul retrieval, whether you call it I'm freezing the frozen part of us, this is what we need to work with. And our system is pretty smart because it tells us. And what I found in my work is I use my memories a lot. And I with people, I often, when I'm actually doing this type of work, and as I've said, we move on, and I've moved on to doing maybe a more involved transformational work. But this process I found over and over again, it just helps dissolve what's going on there. And when I subtitled my book called Connecting to the Light with its subtitle, A Frozen Inner Child Transformation Process. But originally I called it The Ghosts Within. Why did I do that? It was because at the time I was doing a lot of ghost busting, going in and freeing up people who hadn't made their transition. I was also doing a lot of past life regressions. So I had a lot of concept about time and space in lots of ways. Now, the thought came to me, if a ghost exists externally of us, a ghost, and remember it's the one who hasn't made the transition, then do we have ghosts inside? And from that came my finding and understanding of the inner child process. Now, when I look down at the basically the table of contents of this little booklet I wrote, because it really is a booklet, I have an introduction, which talks about how come I came into doing this work. And although it's not probably the whole full story, because I had quite a drama going on and I had to figure out how come all the work I had done in the few years previously had left it felt like my life was falling apart. Everything was the group I was belonging to, my marriage, everything seemed to kind of be disruptive. And so again, I had to look inside to find out who and what I was and where I was. Now, as I said, I have a foreword that talks about that. Introduction talks about it. Now, the other thing in this book, and I use this a lot, is my pickle jar metaphor, and people who study with me often hear about it. And that is relating the love juice that we have inside to a jar of pickles. And the pickles representing our programming, because we have programming. And how these programs come about is based on our decisions we make. And according to my philosophy, most of those are based on past life experience. In fact, I would go to say all of them that I've ever discovered have been based on that. So past lives play an incredible role as to who you are today, what you've decided. You run it, and how this works, as far as I'm concerned, is you run into an emotion, and you quicker than you can even think. It's beyond millimeters of a second. You reach back in your memory banks to the last time you experienced that feeling, that emotion, and you remake the same decision. So most of our programs are based on what we have experienced some other time and place. And so what we do is we lock in that feeling, we lock in ourselves in that. And so one of the other elements I discovered very early was that the majority of our major programs are done by the time we're around 18 months old. Definitely by 2.5. Now, another little topic I have in here is called light. You hear a lot, and I just sort of skimmed through this little booklet this morning and just to come into my memory banks of it, and I noticed, and it's true. One of the first things I learned was surround your car with white light and protect it. Well, people who know me now is that I don't like to talk too much about having protection, and that's probably good for another day to talk about. But I used to do that. I used to ring my car with white light, ring my house, ring my kids, lots of white light. But again, nobody ever told me what the light was. I spent a long time trying to figure out what the heck is this light they're talking about. It was only when I touched into the light, excuse me, I have to have a little drink of water here. It was only when I touched into the light, I realized that light equals love, that the universal love is in that light. It is the light that comes for us when we die. It is the light that comes for us when we want to transcend, and we can use that light anytime to what do we call dissolve trauma, to release energy. So it's a matter of, first of all, knowing how to identify what your issue is, what is stuck, and in the shamanic way, with what is left, in order to go bring it back. Because I found them inside of me, it was like I did a lot of my own work. I didn't need anybody else. Well, no one else knew the process until I started teaching it. But so I had to do this all in my own mind about how to work with that. So by utilizing love and bringing it to the energy and being committed to accepting that love. And this is where often a lot of people have complications because of that good little feeling called guilt, regret. When we have guilt and regret, what ends up happening is that we don't feel worthy of that loving light that is there, that we can bring in to dissolve all of these issues that we have. So one of the things is to really work at clearing what guilt and regret you have. But very often they're caught in these frozen aspects of ourselves through space and time, and sometimes very, very young. Now, I was a person that grew up that didn't have many memories. Many of you out there are like that, can't remember back. That's because we had trauma. And as soon as we have trauma, and it's correct what the shaman says, they say it leaves. I say it just freezes, and therefore it's like a knot in a tree. It's stuck there. And you go on around it, but it's like it's jammed. You don't have accessibility to what comes before. And what I discovered was if I could remember being 12. In fact, I had a big event happen in my, and I'll tell you about it because it was, like, for me, it was huge. I was sitting in my classroom. I was 12 years old, and all of a sudden in my ears, I heard a bang. That's the only way I can explain it. I heard a bang. I remember looking around the classroom, and it was like I was there, like this was coming out of a haze or coming out, and I really wasn't a disassociated child. And I was coming around, and I was looking in the classroom, and I went, oh. Now, this teacher that we had at the time, and remember, I'm much older, so we had a lot of kind of older rules that they applied. He did a lot on competition. Saved my life in a way. I came to, and I was in D row. So we had an A row, a B row, a C row, and a D row, students all lined up. Now, I hadn't been conscious. I wasn't aware. So here I was in D row. I did not like that. So I ended up studying and learning. But I have to tell you one thing about this teacher that I loved. Every Friday afternoon, we could create, if we had a play, we could act out a play. So in other words, the last part of the Friday afternoon, instead of learning and studying, we got to play. And I have a great imagination, and I could tell people, and we basically acted out plays. Oh, it had a lot to do with pirates, and it had a lot to do with other bits and pieces. Very similar, I'm sure. But we always had on Friday, made sure we had a play that we could act out and do. But mostly that particular teacher, whose name was Mr. Boyd, and he would be long gone now into the other realms. What happened was, for me, when I became aware, I really worked to move up. I ended the year in B row. Then we moved to what we would call here is like college, junior high school, I guess. And I was 13 then, and I ended up being top of the class because I finally found I became present. And because I came present, I was aware. So there's a large part of that, but mostly how do we refine these people? How do we find these parts of us? Is basically our memory, which doesn't let go. And I was started to tell you, and I got concerned, I got sidetracked in my 12-year-old, sorry about that. But 12 years old, if you can communicate to your inner 12-year-old, your 12-year-old will remember being sex, say. And first day of school is often very important for people. You can often start there. What was the first day of school? I don't remember my first day, but my going to school was very traumatic for me. So I do remember some of those days because I cried all the time, and my poor mother was distraught. Anyway, the 6-year-old, when you make contact with the 6-year-old, the 6-year-old will remember being 4. The 4-year-old will remember being 2. The 2-year-old will remember being born, and the birth baby will usually remember conception. And then you can step out to preconception, where all is known. And very easy connection to the light. When you bring the light in and you start letting go, and you allow that love to come in, and you feel really, really, really good about that and how that works, then it becomes much easier to bring that light through the uterus growing up, through the other ages. Now, I didn't start off doing a full row like that. I just started off having one memory and transforming that. And then I got that I would go back in the memory banks, and then learned eventually how I could get to preconception if possible. Preconception is such an important part. Past life regression workshops, I work with it usually for people so that they have accessibility to that awareness of who they were coming in. And that has a lot to do with the purpose of why we're here. Why did we choose to come into this life? What was actually going on? What was the meaning behind it? And some of the things I found over the years was quite interesting. People choosing to come into a particular life that produced a lot of trauma. One I always remember was this stunning looking woman, absolutely beautiful body, beautiful face, carried herself super well, had a horrendous childhood, absolutely horrendous. And her reason for picking the body that she had, because she knew it was a really good body. Didn't really look at all the other circumstances, and that often happens. Another one I had with another gal who had gone through a lot of trauma, separation and loss. She had been born because, you might say, the person that she was attached to, the soul she was really attached to, he had come before. In other words, he was her brother. She was coming in to be this boy's sister. A lot of trauma happened. By the time she was 2.5, I think now that's going back a lot of years, so about very early. Something happened with the parents. The kids were separated. So here she is. She's given up. She's come down into this life to be with her brother. And then her brother goes who knows where. They separated. They put 2 different foster homes. And I cannot remember. I don't think she ever found. Maybe she found. I don't remember, to be honest. I don't remember. I just remember we were dealing with the trauma of coming. And when she realized, oh, I didn't look at anything else. I didn't look ahead. I didn't look to see what else was going. I just wanted to be with my friend. So very often you will choose to come into a life without really looking. So again, this is soul evolving in the sense of the soul to recognize that what is we're doing, because often we'll just go from one life to another life to another life. But that's more of the past life stuff. We want to talk about now is, as I was working, and I keep getting myself sidetracked today. That's interesting. That's what happens in a lot of inner child work, because what we call it, what I call it is that we have a distractor that doesn't really want to talk about, what doesn't want you to go there. There's an investment they have because we built programs on programs. We have defense programs. We don't want to go there. We don't want to remember that, right? We're protecting that hurt. We're protecting that. So when we have a memory come up, it's like all of a sudden our mind will go into, oh, we've got to go do this, or it's more important to that, because we don't want to look. There's a protection that we create so that we do not want to look at where we're going. Now, I've pretty well started talking about preconception, because that is the point where all is known of the possibilities that you have, and you choose for whatever reason. And many people do not choose why they're here. They just jump into and that was taught to me actually via a dream, believe it or not. I was showing that. I was showing all these conceptions. One time I was showing all these lights, and I went, "What's that?" And they said, "That's all the conceptions." And at that moment of conception, all is knowing. And so then you decide whether you want to join in with that conception or not. So your life began before you even attached to the body that you're with right now. It comes from deciding, first of all, is that do you want to join in to where the conception is? And for those that know my transformation work, I sometimes redo people's conceptions because they're a bit messy. So in the sense of energy, love energy from the parents. So preconception, really important. The transformation of these inner frozen children really bring about freedom. So we can have more accessibility to our memories if we're like me, where we didn't. But mostly what we're doing is recreating a core of energy that is love. We begin to realize we know we're loved. Because often parts of us say, well, our parents didn't love us, or this didn't happen, so I'm not loved. I did this, so I'm not lovable. All those unlovable, not good enough things that work around in there. And all of a sudden, there are these little lights that are being transformed, and love comes in. And in the love coming in, it is amazing what begins to happen. It's like all of a sudden you start taking a different viewpoint on your life. Doesn't mean that everything changes overnight, believe me, but it's slow and sure and it's workable. The more you work with your memories, the more you bring that light in and transform. And I'm just going to go back to what I was reading with Sandra Ingerman's, as she was saying in the end, what she does is that she works with this love and has people just be with it as it goes. It's to strengthen. She doesn't talk. She doesn't tell them what she discovered. Well, I talk all the time, so it's like they know what I'm discovering because we're working with it. But anyhow, because I'm asking questions and letting them tell me what's going on. And then the light comes in and it makes everything different. So what is this light, this love, is what I call the source. It's like this wonderful love that accepts and forgives, and it's totally, totally there. And we can do it quite easily in the present. And I think I might just do that in a minute. Also in this process, we talk about the power of affirmation. And for those of you that have seen my recording on power of affirmations, which I think I just uploaded to YouTube the other day, actually. I finally getting back to doing things I needed to have done a number of months ago. The power of affirmations is not so much the affirmation, it's to find what does not agree with it. So when you say, I love me, and that little voice inside says, oh, no, you don't, or you don't deserve it, or whatever. And also you hold energy in different parts of your body. But when you can let that go into the love, you let those thoughts, those feelings that are there that oppose I love me, the love strengthens inside. So with every breath that you take, that love is strengthening, deepening, and broadening inside. You become whole, bit by bit by bit. You didn't create these frozen children all at the same time. You might have created 2 or 3, because we can split. In a massive trauma, we can split. The first time I ran into a split, what I call a split, I was not sure what I was getting into, but one of my students had been raped at 14, and we were doing some transformation. She'd done other work with it, and it hadn't really taken. So one of the things I just asked, if you look all around, is there any other 14-year-olds? We were working with one of them. And she said, oh, yeah. And anyway, there were 2 others. Now, what had happened in that moment of being totally traumatized, she had split into these 3. And just as a thought, this is how we can have multiple personalities, by the way. Each one of those 3 aspects of her had its own belief system, had its own thoughts about decisions about all sorts of things. They're all different. But when we put them and integrated them in the light and put them back together, then the trauma of the rape, the emotion and the trauma where everything was stuck, was finally able to be released. It didn't take away what had happened. It just meant it wasn't stuck anymore. And the 14-year-olds could grow back on up to join her. And I think she was in her 20s at the time. Amazing, amazing, beautiful healing work that is done when you use light. And that's the energy I use for pretty well all my work of transformation, etc. The process is actually got lots of stages in it. It looks, when you first look at it, you think, oh my goodness, how am I ever going to learn this? But the reality is it's got steps to it. And it is a process to make contact with yourself, or have the person who's leading you, which would be the person who knows how to do this. I write out the whole process actually in this little book. And some people have used it and got back to me and said they enjoyed it. So, well, there's not a lot of other things I want to say, I don't think. All I know is these parts of ourselves can happen yesterday, a week ago. And the key is, if you have a memory that keeps coming back, whether it was a month ago, 10 years ago, but you keep going back there to that memory, there's trauma stuck there. If you have an emotion that keeps coming back up, oh yes, this is one part I forgot to mention. When we freeze in a feeling of emotion. Now, to me, feelings are how we're supposed to, our body tells us what's going on by the feelings that come up. And as we work with this, the feeling comes up. The frozen, I'm going to call it a child because that's the way I work with here, but the frozen person, the child inside, that's what they're frozen in, and that's what their reality is. When you have that feeling again, they feel, oh, things are normal and natural. So very often what happens is they assert themselves into your life. So you keep recreating the same things. And that's why very often we talk about, there's a chain of them. We'll start off at, when was the last time you had this feeling? Oh, I had it, I remember it, 24, blah, blah, blah. So we'll start with a 24-year-old or a 36 or whatever is necessary. And you have them go back to the memory. And what begins to happen, you begin to find out all sorts of other like feelings and emotions that you've created, because emotions are where you're stuck. And that's the important element, that you're able to go back and free yourself up. So you don't have to keep re-feeling the same feeling, because you've given it up. You brought the light in. You let the light take it. You let the light transform it. You've grown up. I'm a great believer when you do these transformations is that you grow up that energy through all that you went down to be present today, to join you. So what begins to happen, you become more, as I said, inside, more solid, more aware, more coming into a reality of being. And that's soul retrieval. That's bringing in pieces of ourselves back into the whole. Whether you find a shaman who's going to go out and find it and bring it back to you, or you're going to find someone who can take you inside and connect you to the light through your memories, through the feelings that you have, you're going to know what freedom is. You're going to know how that works in such a way that you're going to be able to know. So I want you to just take a moment. And this is a little exercise that I often do with people. I just want you to close your eyes for a moment. And as you close your eyes, I want to have you look around in your mind's eye for a light. Now, the light could be of any color. It's not a street light. It's not a house. It's just a kind of a usually fuzzy kind of color, usually a color. And I want you to feel the color. Actually, sorry, I said that incorrectly. I want you to concentrate on that light or the color. If you can't see it, I want you to imagine a color that you like. So there's many roads that get you to the same place. So if you're imagining a color that you like, just imagine it's around you. Just imagine it's around you. And if you see a light, bring it around you, bring it to you. No matter how far away it appears, just imagine it coming. Imagination is good in this work. And then I want you begin to think about, and what I ask my clients to do is to give me 3 words as to how that color feels. And often when they're in that, they're sometimes saying warm, sometimes they say it's cool, sometimes they say it's, many different words. And all of a sudden they'll go, oh, I just need to add another color here. I just need to add something else. But usually if you look out in your mind's eye and you see a color, it's usually there. You bring it in. And what we are looking for is it comfortable? Does it feel like it accepts you? 100%. Does it accept you? In other words, no judgments. And does it love you? And then you can bring that light all around you, bring it all around, and as it comes all around, big breath, bring it inside through the pores of your skin. Bring it right in and begin to fill your whole body up with it. And just with the affirmation, actually there's several that I like. I have I actually have a CD, as you probably know, or of affirmations, and I have them written out. But mostly I work with, just in the moment, is I love me. And to really feel that lovingness, and anything that does not feel like it's loving, give it over to that color, because in that color is the love, and love transforms because it is light. And as we know, light will take away dark. So everything is about I love me, and feel it sink right down, and not just in your head, but right down into your body. I love me. Big breath. Then go, I trust me. Because what I find so often is people don't trust themselves. I always double think myself, and you'd think by now I would just know, listen to yourself and you're fine. I have a strong mental side that I still, at this age, is working with. I trust me, but I do have that inside that I do trust me. I do know. The thing is to listen. Maybe I need to add, I listen to me. That's maybe, thank you. I found a point for what I can work with. I listen to me. I trust me. And then just ensure, breathe into that color that's inside you. Let it run through your body, looking for any blocks where it doesn't want to run. It's like water. Where does it not go? Because those are going to be blocked. You can go back and look at, see what thoughts are there, feelings are there. The other 2 that I work with are just in a very simple way is I am loved. Most of us don't know we're loved at a deep level, but this light loves us in that deep level. And we can bring that in, and it brings in with so much ease and grace and knowingness. And I'm lovable. It was the last one I really touched in when I was learning about how to do this. I love me, I had, and I was working with. I am loved came from the light when I realized that the light loved me. But when I got it inside and I realized that, yes, I was lovable. And so for each one of you, just on those 4, and if you would like to get the affirmation list, what I call loving self affirmations, please let me know, because I can send you a sheet and you can begin to work with the directions of how to do it. If you would like to find out more about the process, you can go to my website too, www.normacowie.com, and there you can order Connecting to the Light. And and there's a PDF. I don't think we have it on the website, but if you can email me to norma.cowie@gmail.com, and I can send you the PDF copy, which is much more reasonably priced, and you just run it off, because it's only about 20 pages or 22 pages to run off, double-sided. I trust that this soul retrieval question that was asked, and I really do welcome people emailing me with the topic they want to listen to rather than me just coming up with whatever. Because what this did was have me realize that soul retrieval and my own frozen emotional children work was very similar, and that we people on the same path come to the same conclusions, and that light, love, is what really makes the big difference. I want to thank you for listening this week, and I look forward to being with you from Edmonton. Same time, I'll have to get up early because up there it'll be 9 o'clock in the morning. We'll be speaking on, I'm not sure what yet, but someone did ask me to talk about pendulums, and I may talk about different tools we can use. So we'll just see what happens because I am traveling and I'm not sure how much we will be doing. Thank you. You have a great day.